On this week's episode, did Rampage do some damage at the box office? Start that again just in case it didn't come through. On this week's episode, did Rampage do some damage at the box office? Our picks for the best in the NBA season, and was the change for Thor a good thing? All this and more as we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos. The pop culture cosmos. And we are back once again with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly thank you for tuning in each and every time you catch us on the radio dial or you catch us on the download. It is once again another great episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos, but it wouldn't be this show without my good friend. He is the man, the myth, the legend at Humanica Media. You got to check out all the great things that are going on in the world of Humanica Media at humanicamedia.com. It's Josh Peterson. What's going on, my friend?
Just reeling from that Los Angeles Kings loss that should have been a victory. But we won't talk about that because it's a happy show full of happy things and not deaths flipping over and stuff.
And I won't even tell him that my end of the show is being done from the Vegas area. And I'm so sad to hear about that going on because, as I've told people all past couple of weeks here in the Las Vegas area, that my heart is torn because half my life was spent in LA and almost half my life has been spent here. So kind of half on what's going on. So either which way.
I have a question, a very important question.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I get that brand new franchises, anyone who votes for that team is going to be considered a bandwagon, but the people in the audience, how much of them, because tickets, you're saying $200 a pop for nosebleed section. People in the audience, how much of them do you think are high rollers or like affiliated with casinos and stuff? And how many do you think are actual hockey fans?
A lot of them are converted hockey fans. A lot of them are locals. Some of them I know personally that have actually spent a great deal of money, and I won't say how much on the air, how much they spent on the tickets for the games, but I have consulted with them about that. Some of them are really big fans. Some of them have like the Blues, the Kings, the Penguins, and are still affiliated so much with those franchises. But I do hear you. It's taken over this town as far as the success of this team. And truth be told, it was a hard time to get the actual 10,000 seat deposit to actually get a team here in Las Vegas to begin with. So it was a hard sell to bring a team to Las Vegas in the first place. But once they got them here, it seemed to have snowballed, and the success from it is now really helped the Las Vegas area. And also as well, it's really revitalized and given something for the city to rally around, especially after the events back in October and what happened there. And really it's been something good for the city. So it is a happy story right now, and having the best expansion team ever in the major sports history here in the United States. It's a great story indeed, but I know like I said, part of me is still very much a Kings fan. And while I'm sad for that, I'm happy to see at least it's going the success for the way for a good team that actually kind of deserves it. And kind of like I said, it's Cinderella. The glass slipper fits right now. Will it stay fit? We don't know. The glass slipper might break at any moment, but at least it's a good story for now, at least in the NHL.
Is it though? Is it?
Well, certainly not for 100% Kings fans like yourself, and I can totally understand that. So, but it is a great episode coming up. Indeed, we have for you. We're going to be talking the latest in the box office, and it was definitely a close race this weekend in the U.S. box office. Rob McCallum is also standing by in the Cosmic Crossfire. We're going to go at it as far as our choices for the best cinematic universe. He's got 3 choices coming up for me. We're going to be talking about which one we like the best and why. That's coming up again in the Cosmic Crossfire. Anthony Barberin comes up later in the show. We're going to be dishing out our NBA postseason awards, NBA season awards for the year 2017-2018 this season. So we're going to be sharing our thoughts on who the best was. And then also at the back end, Josh and I are going to be talking about what's going on with our breakdown, what's going on with our breakdown with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we're up to, believe it or not, Thor Ragnarok, and our thoughts on the changes in Thor's character with that film. Plus, Josh and I are also going to talk about mascots in video games and our thoughts on some of the ones we like, some of them like, but about you know what? Let's go have some fun when we're talking about mascots in video games. But again, we're going to be talking right now about. But right now, we're going to be talking about the breakdown in this weekend's box office. For a while, Josh, on Friday, it looked like A Quiet Place would sneak out another victory here domestically at the box office this weekend. But with pretty good word of mouth, pretty good social media as far as the word of mouth, per se, it looks like The Rock's latest movie, Rampage, will take the weekend at the box office with about $34 million. Just behind it, with about 32.5, 33 million, is A Quiet Place with a very good hold, which you predicted, Josh, with about less than 40% as far as decline. And looks like the numbers are going to be so good for A Quiet Place that when it is all said and done, it will probably be at least the best so far, the highest grossing non-Marvel movie this year. So it will probably pass Ready Player One here at some point in the next 2 or 3 weeks and become the highest grossing non-Marvel movie here in the United States. Of course, there's a lot of movies to go, and it will get blown away by others. But for now, it's a small victory for a really, really cool movie in which you really liked. If you want to check out our episodes last week, we had an episode devoted to the review of The Quiet Place, so check that out. Josh, your thoughts on the weekend box office? Rampage did hold out the victory, but A Quiet Place wasn't too far behind.
It actually really surprises me that Rampage did so well. I think, and I want to say it's mostly due to The Rock, but have you read any actual reviews on what people are saying about the movie?
Well, the critical reviews are saying it basically either extremely negative or it's just plain popcorn dumb fun. That's the best I can see as far as from what I see from a critical standpoint. From the word of mouth, they just say it's a good fun. From what I'm seeing, people seem to like it just because of the much destruction, and they're going about it in the right way. They're leaving their critical and analytical mind at the door and just say, hey, look, let's just let's have some popcorn. Let's just have have some fun, kick some booty with the huge mountainous gorilla right there by his side, destroying some buildings and so forth and so on and so forth. So if that's the case, it looks like it's going to go ahead and at least have a couple of weeks of a good run before it gets destroyed by Infinity War. Now, the question here is that I'm posed to you. It did earn over $50 million this week at the Chinese box office, exceeding what it did here in the United States. It's made around 120, 130, actually almost $140 million worldwide so far. But it has a long way to go, just like Ready Player One did before it either breaks even or actually makes a profit at the box office. Right now, it looks like Ready Player One will do so, but will Rampage see the same kind of success long term at the worldwide box office and turn a profit, which is a rarity for a video game adaptation?
Here's the thing with that. A lot of people I've talked to don't actually know that Rampage is a video game adaptation. So I don't like how many critics actually know that Ramp adaptation. This one's weird because the rules of don't seem to apply to this movie. One, because it's The Rock, and two, because it's such an obscure property. Like, you ask a lot of people, Double Dragon, they make fun of movies from the 80s. I know you had a big part in the making of that film. They talk about movies from the 80s.
Yeah.
Walk down memory lane.
And not
They
a good
talk,
one, I shall say.
yeah. We'll have to. We need to go into detail on this one day. Um, but yeah, 80s movies. It's like, say, like Double Dragon, like, oh, it's such a bad movie, but they don't know it's a video game. There's a lot of stuff out there. People don't know that it's video games. So, this movie's weird, and it doesn't surprise me that it would do well in a foreign market, just because that seems to be the trend. They like, Pacific Rim did well over there. Godzilla, I'm sure. Monster movies tend to do well in those markets because they're not as snobby as we are when it comes to, critic culture and stuff like that. So I don't know, man.
Transformers movies obviously have done great there as well.
Yeah, that's because that's their culture. They're more into sci-fi, cool mech robot stuff, and we're more into the socially conscious, type films, and we like to judge things pretty harshly. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not going to see it in theaters, but I will watch it when it comes out.
I think I'll do the same, but it's nice to see that the movie theaters, that's nice to see that there is some sort of market for these video game adaptations, and they're not all just going to go and fail miserably each and every time they come out. It's, yeah, like you said, I agree with you. Not a lot of people know when they're going to the theaters that this is a video game adaptation. It is being mentioned. If the reviewer has done their homework, they will. It shows in the review that, and it shows that they know about it being a video game adaptation. But you're right. There are some that are totally missing the boat on that aspect. Be that as it may, I'm going to say it's still going to have a hard time breaking even, but at least we know that The Rock can power a movie to a decent opening, even a movie that was, I guess, the Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, I think, squeaked above 50%, but still, that's a lot of bad reviews out there for it, even though there's some decent ones as well. That's still not a very highly acclaimed picture. And it's nice to know that The Rock, with his clout and his box office power, can go ahead and power a movie on his name to at least a number one opening. It's not a guarantee, mind you, but at least in this case, it's barely squeaked out the number one opening as far as that's concerned here in the US and actually all over the world as well. I'm going to ask this. Does his cloud and does his streak end with the upcoming Skyscraper movie coming out later this year? Because from all the buzz I'm seeing and all the word of mouth I'm seeing, people are just not liking this movie at all, and they're just trying to equate it to Die Hard or some other movies as far as being a total ripoff of it, and they really think that and a lot of people are thinking that Skyscraper will be the end of the road as far as Rock's run as a number one box office champion.
I don't know, man, because we were saying the same thing about Rampage, so it'll be interesting. I honestly, as long as there's another Fast and the Furious coming down the pipeline, I don't think we're going to be seeing the end of The Rock anytime soon. Every star can do one or two flubs and still be loved and admired and sell movies. Look at Vin Diesel. He's had quite a few, yet back in Fast and the Furious, though, Groot, people still love him. He's still in the spotlight. So I don't think that maybe people won't be as willing to, and they shouldn't make movies like Skyscraper, but yeah, we'll see, man. I think that The Rock definitely has, because Baywatch, despite all of its shortcomings, people still liked it. Like, it was a stupid movie. Jumanji was another one we didn't think was going to do so well. It's literally, the box office with The Rock is unpredictable. There's no way to even know where that's going. That could be a sinking ship that ends up righting itself and driving around the world. So we don't know. It's really hard to tell with him.
Exactly, but at this point in time, he's about as safe as bet as anything out. Well, at least at this point, you can tell. Well, at least at this point, it's easy to say that at this point in time, he's about as good a box office star as there is. Maybe at this point, Chris, maybe at this point, I don't know. If there's any other. At this point, maybe Chris Pratt is probably a bigger star right now if he continues this route, because as long as The Rock continues this line of maybe suspect choices in films, it will leave the door open for Chris Pratt to go ahead and take that mantle, which I think he's just about ready to take anyways, if he hasn't already, with his stock as far as with the Jurassic Park movies as the number one box office star, being in both Marvel and Jurassic Park. Plus, also as well, he did okay in Passengers and whatnot. So we'll have to wait and see. But at this point in time, The Rock's clout is still there, and it's great to see that at least he can still power a halfway decent movie to a number one box office weekend. What are your thoughts on the weekend in the box office? Are you glad the Rampage still found a way to eke out a victory over A Quiet Place? Or did you want to see Quiet Place upset everyone again at the box office and take a second week in a row for that really solid underdog of a movie? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Stars on Facebook and Twitter as well. You'll have to excuse me one moment. I'm sorry. Well, it's going to be a great episode we've got for you indeed. We've got Rob McCallum standing by in the Cosmic Crossfire to chat with me and debate over the best in movie franchises. Plus, also as well, Josh and I are going to come back and talk mascots and video games, and also later on, Thor Ragnarok. We're going to continue our breakdown of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and why the change in Thor may or may not be a good thing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But first, we've got our good friend. It's Elijah Harrison, aka Plasma Z. This is Supernova, and this is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back. We just want to make sure and let you know our shows are being streamed 7 days a week on online radio stations, and that we deliver 2 brand new shows covering the latest in pop culture each and every Monday and Friday to Apple Podcasts or over 30 different podcast networks. Just subscribe to any one of them on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel to get extra content, or just check out the Pop Culture Cosmos Facebook page for our entire radio schedule and a list of those podcast networks. Josh, I know you got a great thing going on with Humanica Media, so break it down for me, man. What is going on with your awesome place known as Humanica Media?
A brand new episode of Topicocalypse just dropped. You can catch it now. Hurry. It's there's only 5 in stock. You got to get it quick. Just get on there, check it out. It's about.
I pre-ordered, man. I pre-ordered the collector's edition.
Yeah, you did, man. Make sure you fill out that survey too. It's about concerts, of course, because it was Daniel's topic, and he wanted to know what our dream concert is, and if we got to schedule Coachella, who would we put on the bill? So that was an interesting concert or interesting podcast. But also, if you haven't checked it out,
hold on. U2 at the Hollywood Bowl and U2.
I did Pearl Jam at what's the theater in Seattle? The
Key Arena?
The Moore Theater, where Eddie Vedder, where they filmed the 10 video, or
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, and anyways, yeah, and also you can check out the last episode of Topicocalypse, which features an exclusive interview with Adam Morgan of Hope's Fall, and Super BS is also going to have an exclusive interview coming out on Tuesday with Jonathan Nordhagen of the developer of Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. So you can definitely check that out. And also Podcast Radio Network. Gerald, go ahead and tell them what time, man.
I was going to say, if you didn't say the water tastes like wine, I would, because remember, I had such a hard time with it at E3. But it is the Attack of the Humanicans, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network, where you can also find our shows on from the Pop Culture Cosmos on Monday and Friday evenings. So, Josh, you wanted to talk about some great things in the video game world that not a lot of people seem to talk about and seem to forget about, but they are so identifiable when it comes to mascots in video games. So, I wanted to hear more about it when you brought it up as a topic. So tell me, my friend, what are your thoughts as far as mascots and video games?
Well, it's weird. So we have Spyro the Dragon HD trilogy coming out, and I'm stoked. I'm beyond stoked about that. Crash Bandicoot just came out, and it made me wonder, like, back when we had a point when consoles had mascots, like they had games. You thought Sony, that's Crash, that's Spyro, Nintendo, that's Mario, that's Donkey Kong, Sega, that's Sonic the Hedgehog. And then the Xbox came out, and that was like the first shift away from mascot oriented gaming to franchise oriented gaming. So it was no longer, you didn't have a specific character selling a console as much as you had a franchise selling a console. So Xbox had Halo, obviously now it has Gears of War, Fable. PlayStation is Uncharted. It's probably gonna be Horizon Zero Dawn now, God of War.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Now they're putting all their stock into God of War. And actually, I asked a question from several people out there with the Retro City Games Facebook group, and they're talking about how they are getting a PlayStation 4 and are actually interested in it for the first time because of the God of War game coming out later this week.
Oh, it looks fantastic. I'm super excited about it. I'm probably not gonna play it until like another 2 weeks, just because I want to sit down and be able to play it all the way through without having to like go to work or anything. So that'll be exciting. But anyways, yeah. So now like the mascots as far as these video game consoles go, Sega's not really around anymore, not in the form that they used to be.
Well, I will tell you this, Sega did, you're right. Sega is not around the way it used to be, but they're still trying. And in fact, they did announce in Japan this past weekend that there is their own version of the Sega mini console on the way, that actually will be an official version from them with the installed games that we've seen so far, that Nintendo has done with their own minis so far. So Sega's coming out with their own mini Genesis coming out later. I believe it's later this year from what I remember.
Yeah, they talked about that, and that's awesome. I'm stoked because a lot of these Air games you can't play many old cartridges on them. So like I have some Sega games and I can't play it on my Air Games Sega reproduction console. So I'll definitely be picking one of these up. But yeah, and also they announced there's a Nintendo Master Collection coming to the Sega Master Collection coming to the Nintendo Switch. The only thing is, with both of these big announcements, which are awesome, Shenmue 1 and 2, I guess, is coming to
All platforms.
all platforms. But with these, with the Sega Genesis Master System or whatever, and the Sega Collection, they didn't announce a Western release date for them. So I know it's inevitable, but I wonder how soon they're going to be able to get those into the Western market and how excited fans are. Because I know when Air Games announced that other Genesis console that they were talking about last year, there wasn't a lot of great feedback over it. So maybe since Sega's actually pushing it out, it's going to be something good this time.
But getting back to mascots in video games, you said there was a shift when the Xbox came out because it went more to a franchise. What do you want to see as far as mascots in video games? Because, like you said, in the late 80s and the 90s, especially as far as video games, we were very much into seeing and identifying a console with a certain type of mascot attached to it.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, like, video games now and kids. So, all the kids, like my nephew, like, I tried to get him to play, Faye on the Nintendo Switch, and he's just not smart enough to play a sophisticated game on a console, and it's not just because he's not smart, but it's because a lot of kids his age aren't smart enough to follow a like a complicated video game. They're not, you take like your God of Wars, your Final Fantasies, your um, Legend of Zeldas. Like a lot of kids can't play those because they don't have the attention span for it anymore. And I know mobile gaming has a lot to do with it because a lot of those games are like instant satisfaction. Look at this flashing light presses, car blows up, stuff like that. And this is, it makes me wonder if maybe mobile gaming is going to bring about the end of consoles, but that's why games like PUBG, Fortnite are coming over to sell mobile platforms. But this gets back to my original point, is that they're not marketing consoles to kids anymore. They're and I know it's maybe they're thinking about this. I hope they're thinking about it. But like when I was a kid, they marketed consoles to kid. They marketed them through Donkey Kong. They marketed them through Mario. They marketed them through Sonic. These like they were kid characters that were kid friendly, and they were meant to sell consoles for. So I would go to my mom and say, "Hey, Mom, I want this PlayStation so I can go buy Crash Bandicoot or play Spyro." When Spyro came out, I was so obsessed with getting this game and it was sold out everywhere. And my mom drove me to 6 different stores before we found a copy of it. And it was the last one. And they don't do that anymore. They market Forza, Halo, stuff like this, like games that aren't really supposed to be for kids, and I think that's why kids under the age of 12 don't really care about consoles that much. And then it also kills it going later into it because they don't have a history with any of the games like we had a history growing up.
Well, I will say this, it was the original intent of retailers out there to market video game consoles as to children, because they actually, where did they start putting it in, at first? In the toy section. How did they market it? As a toy. How do they market it? With other toys. So definitely that was the origination of the video game console. But you're right, it has evolved into something different. At this point in time, kids are brought up on mobile devices, they're brought up on tablets, they're brought up on their parents' phones, they're brought up on a lot of other things outside of the console market. And it isn't until the kids want something more developed, that maybe tell a stronger narrative, that maybe, like you said, are in need of a larger attention span than what kids used to have. Because when you and I were kids, you and I would go ahead and be enthralled with an adventure game, with an expansive game of maybe from the PC or a console or what have you, whether it was a RTS, whether it was a sports game or whatnot, something just really involving and really out there, as far as that only a console game or a PC game or an arcade game could provide. Now it's something completely different. The kids just want to go ahead and use the tablets, use the mobile devices, and play those type of games, which is fine. But you're right. And I think that's why the EAs, the Activisions, the Microsoft, Sony's, Nintendos of the world are maybe marketing, and even in Nintendo's case, which still tries to reach a younger audience of any of them, it is still, the primary audience is still late teens, 20s, 30s, and even my age as well, as far as they're going to more likely to market to me now than they are someone of my daughter's age, per se, that's 10 or 12.
It's going to, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. I don't have a degree in marketing, but it's going to kill the market. It's going people. Why is a kid gonna want to sit there? Like, I admire parents. I was reading about this one guy who made his son, for every new video game his son wanted to play, the son first had to play a recommendation from the father. So like they start out with like Ocarina of Time. The kid had to beat that before he could play Call of Duty. And I admire that. But kids don't they're the mobile market is going to basically kill any interest in these. Pretty soon they're not going to be able to justify spending millions of dollars on these AAA titles to create them because nobody's going to buy them. Once the nostalgia era wears off, then people millennials right now are like the last generation of like true gamers. So all the kids coming up behind my generation aren't really going to have as much interest. So they need to really come up with something that's going to recapture that market. Or maybe it's because the parents don't want to pay for the consoles, and if they have a phone, it's cheaper just to pay $3 as opposed to $60. But they really got to come up with something that's going to save them, or else these it's not gonna the future is gonna be bleak for big titles.
I have a tendency to agree with you because it will be an issue and will be a case where the generation behind you and that young generation now that's in barely in their teens for the most part, or even younger, will not go straight to a console like we have and just just choose for something different, something more mobile, something more that they're adept to, and more that they're and something that they're more comfortable with, because like you said, it's something that they weren't raised on like we were. And that could be a bad sign for the industry unless they change and evolve themselves. What are your thoughts on the ever-changing video game industry and mascots being the key possibly to a revival for the console industry to younger audiences? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Facebook, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. When we come back, Anthony Barberin and I are gonna break down the NBA postseason awards, our best in the NBA for this season. Plus, also as well, after that, Josh and I will return to close out the show to talk a little bit about Thor Ragnarok, and was the change a good one for Thor, and the shift as far as everything that went on in Thor Ragnarok. Overall, was it a good thing for him, and was it a good thing for the MCU? We're going to talk about that as we close out the show. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're now closing out the show. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Thanks so much for sticking around for the entire show. We truly appreciate it. Once again, I want to thank Anthony Barberin for breaking down the NBA season with us, and who his thoughts were, and his thoughts on who the best was in this latest NBA season. Plus, also as well, Rob McCallum, as always, from Rob McCallum Films. Check out all the great projects he's got going on, including the Kitty documentary, and also April 24th, his latest project is coming to Kickstarter. So check that out, indeed. Josh, as we continue to break down the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're up to Thor Ragnarok, which was a decidedly different shift in how we perceive the Thor character from the previous two installments of Thor. I liked it. I thought it was a good direction for it. I know you have some issues more so than I did. I know the only real issue I had with it was watching Thor Ragnarok made me feel like watching the other two movies, as bad as I think they are, and I know you like them more than I did, as bad as I think they are, it made them pretty much null and void for me ever wanting to watch them again, because of all the things that were changed, including Thor himself in Thor Ragnarok.
No, I agree. It kind of made it seem, I always question, like, when I haven't gone back and watched yet. It's on my list. I'm kind of going through the rest of them right now, but I wondered when I saw that, after I got over the initial shock of it all, I wondered if it was a decision by the writers, it was a decision by the studio, was it just Waititi going, it'd be really cool if we did this. And I respect him as a filmmaker, like more so than I respect someone like Rian Johnson going, it'd be really cool if Daisy's parents were nobody. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like it I feel like it could have been handled better. They should have. I didn't like Natalie Portman that much, but they put us through a lot of awkward pain to get that storyline fleshed out, and then they're just like, oh, by the way, yeah, it's pointless. And then with Ragnarok, it's the whole idea of like the warriors,
The
when
Warriors 3.
Warriors 3, yeah, like you grow attached to these characters, and you feel, even like, the Dark World does a good job of making you like actually feel for these characters, and then they just kill him off. Didn't even like what's his name? Ray Stevenson's guy didn't even barely got any dialogue. Yeah, one line, and then he got killed. So I'm hoping that they're gonna follow the rebirth of Thor in the comic books post Civil War, and bring them back in some way, some form. Maybe if they do a fourth Thor movie where Thor rebuilds Asgard in uh it's either New Mexico or Oklahoma. I can't remember. It's one of those places, but they didn't get their justice. Yeah, the stuff with Heimdall was really cool. I'm glad they kind of fleshed out his character a little more, but the film had such a massive story to tell, and like by mixing in the Planet Hulk stuff, it almost felt rushed at some points. Like it didn't that's what stuck out to me more than the constant joking on screen. But you know, it felt like they were trying to tell too many stories in one. I liked it. It didn't like fumble through it in the way that like a Sony Spider-Man flick did it, but there's just parts, cuz as a comic book fan, as someone who's read both these comic arcs, that it felt like there was stuff in it that they should have shown but they didn't.
Even though it's been played out over the course of an Avengers movie and also two Thor movies as well, I would have liked to seen a better completion and a better story arc between Loki and Thor, and also their father, the way they went, also, and Odin, and the way that they, kind of tried to mend their relationship with one another. I would have liked to seen that better handled myself as well. It kind of seemed like they just wanted to bookend some cameo appearances from Anthony Hopkins and then be done with it. And that part I just wanted to see a little bit more fleshed out. I did like the tone, and I did like the fact that it was a better representation of Thor, because of the fact that it does hone his comedic chops, which I think are very good for Chris Hemsworth. And I like it much better than the Shakespearean Thor that we've seen in the first two and the Avengers movie. That was pretty much as much as I could stand out of that. But I do like the change in Thor. As far as the movie itself, you're right. It may have had too much comedy. The Planet Hulk stuff with Hulk now speaking and interacting much more with Hulk, much more with Thor. Okay, it lends to a little less mystery about the Hulk character now, but be that as it may, I guess they wanted to go ahead and throw that in there. But I think they just threw too much in there a little bit for shock value. But overall, I kind of enjoyed it. I thought Jeff Goldblum's character was really good, really strong as far as the overseer of the planet that they landed on. I thought he was really good in what he does, because it was pretty much Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum to a T, and that's always enjoyable as long as he's not put too much on the screen. Tessa Thompson, I really think she did extremely well. I think out of anybody in the movie, thought she performed the best. Kate Blanchett, with her role, with what she was given, I thought she was okay. As far as the Marvel villains go, I thought she was okay. I don't, no take it or leave it there. But overall, I thought the movie was a solid one. You're right. The actual Ragnarok itself really didn't come to fruition in the way I thought it would. It really just kind of just fizzled out at the end as far as that's concerned. But overall, I enjoyed it and I thought it was a fun flick, and it's something I would watch again. But it for what it does and all the changes that it makes and all the characters it kills off, it renders the first two Thors useless as far as the MCU going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like fumbling through storylines a little bit. But no, I agree, man. Like yeah, Thor 1 was hard to watch mostly cuz the camera was, you know, crooked most of the movie, but Thor 2, they failed to capture what Thor is and what Thor means to comic book readers. And this is not just Thor Ragnarok. They actually did a better job of kind of capturing that recklessness of Thor in that movie than they did in the first one. But they Thor is not really Shakespearean. Like I don't know, like in Norse mythology, why they thought that Thor is actually a very like we've talked about this before. He's a very dark character. His comic books are very dark. Like Thor Disassembled was a story of Ragnarok, and that was a very, very dark, depressing comic book, but it was cool. It was epic. There's a lot of meat on the bones in that comic, and we didn't get that. We haven't gotten that. They I guess they sort of attempted it in Dark World, but then they kind of they set it up really well, and then they didn't close it down at all very well. It was they're trying too hard to balance the darkness with the jokes that everyone wants out of a Marvel film, and until they you know, come to terms with the idea that Thor is not a jokey character except in the Avengers films, we're not going to get the Thor that the fans deserve to see.
That may be the case, but I think for general audiences that they like the shift in the Thor character. And like you said, Marvel does know how to play to a general and wide audience. Maybe it's the way that they're actually trying to go to a larger, broader audience than maybe the comic book centric individual that focuses on. Maybe they're focusing on more of a broader audience as far as what they can accept and what they like and appreciate, rather than what the comic book centric fan may be more interested in. I think that's probably it, and that's why the necessity, there is the necessitation on their part to go ahead and influx everything with jokes and try and be as lighthearted as you can, even in the darkest of situations. So I believe that's why Thor Ragnarok took the direction that it did, and they realized because of it they could get a broader audience to accept it, embrace it, and come more into the theaters than maybe the darker tones of the first two Thor films. What are your thoughts on Thor Ragnarok? Oh, did you want to go? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, it'd be cool if they were to give that a shot though, just once, just to see if it works, just an experiment. Get like a Dark Knight style Thor film could be cool to see, but who knows, man? I think they're too far into their progression to do something like that, so we'll see.
I agree. At this point in time, the Marvel formula has worked, and really, Josh, how can you argue with its success so far? What are your thoughts on Thor Ragnarok? Do you like the shift in direction for Thor the character, and also Thor's universe? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, Josh, it's going to be a great episode we've got coming up on Friday. We're going to be talking a lot about God of War. I know I wanted to talk about it on this one, but there's so much to talk about when it comes to God of War. I think we're going to go ahead and make that the main event on the PCC Multiverse coming up later this week, because it is coming out this Friday and a lot of people are really looking forward to it. So we're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more on this upcoming episode of the PCC Multiverse on Friday. Any last thoughts? Any last thoughts before we head on out?
Yeah, I'm gonna be writing a Lost Sphere review tomorrow. I finally finished it. It took about 26 hours, and it was the probably one of my least favorite games I've ever played. So you can be looking forward to that if you want to get some giggles while listening to a nice or reading a nice video game review, not so nice video game review.
Then I know you got another one coming up as well for the Xbox One.
I just started The Vanishing of Ethan Carter today, so I will be reviewing that. I played a little bit of the Darwin Project, so I'll be talking about that too. Also, not
You're
much.
just a man full of video games even before God of War comes out.
Yeah, it's been a busy week, man. Still playing Far Cry. Game is super long. One day I'll beat it. Probably gonna put it down for God of War. We'll see, man. Got a lot on the old plate.
Indeed, you do. But that's why we love pop culture. But that's why we love video games, and that's why we love video games being a part of pop culture. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford.
Wait, real quick. Do you know what would be a
Yes,
cool ad for us? We'll just
what's
shoot
that?
video games up into space and borrow Tesla's video camera. We'll just film them floating. That'll be our ad.
Out of a convertible, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. The robot will try to play the video game, and they'll put some like sound effects in there of him going, "Oh man," as like we have a cartridge of Donkey Kong floating out into the cosmos.
Very expensive, man. Very expensive. I don't think our budget yet quite works out for something like that.
We are accepting donations.
That's our next Patreon project right there for you. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the pop culture cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.